Hey, it's Tpok. I'm back in Leaves, and we left off with, Matsuri, right? Matsuri? Her... The girl who you would not expect to have drugs, or ever try drugs. Wanting meds, I guess, specifically. I didn't know much, but I did know this. That there was no way she'd just say, meds, in the same way I'd say it. What are you talking about? I finally managed. Some kind of prescription? She just shot me a blank stare. It wasn't as if I was trying to play the fool. It was that I really was the fool here. So I continued, is something the matter? A cold, a headache, a stomachache, or maybe menstrual cramps? She just shot me yet another blank stare, and said nothing. Her eyes, dark wells devoid of emotion or any color, bored into me. I really felt like I was being sliced right through. It was as if I wasn't even there. She was looking right through me, past me, maybe at some interesting speck on the wall. And I began to feel pathologically, hysterically afraid of her company. Come on, I almost pleaded. What's the matter? Perhaps you know better than I, she answered with a shrug. In all the time I'd known her, this had never changed. I'd never seen any flicker of expression or life in that gaze of hers. I'd never seen a smile ever fill her eyes with joy. She held me captive with her icy gaze for a few seconds more before releasing me with a sigh. And then she muttered, "Or perhaps you do not." Then something akin to a smile fluttered to her face for a second. "And what if I do?" I retorted after I recovered. "No, you probably have nothing to do with it," she said, as if to herself, "and that is why." She cut herself off here, which prompted me, of course, to ask, "That is why what?" I am relieved. Was the only thing I could think of to say. Because she didn't look like she was lying. Sorry for worrying you then, I mumbled. "Oh no," she replied. "My pleasure. I'm supposed to worry about you after all." Well, whatever. In any case, why exactly are you bringing up meds? I asked. I was kind of bothered by the last thing she said, but, well, whatever. I had bigger fish to fry. She gave me a distracted look before speaking. "It appears that there is a new drug dealer on the scene. A young man about our age and as ruthless as he is young." "What the hell?" I exclaimed. "And what, you were suspicious? You thought it might be me? Is that it?" She replied icily, "Unfortunately, that cannot be entirely excluded, can it now?" "Cold, man. Real cold." I spat back. "I should have expected as much out of you. Sorry to disappoint you, but I don't do drugs. Haven't sunk that far, although I'm sure you'd be amused as if I did. I'm fine with my alcohol and tobacco, thank you very much. And for crying out loud, if I started doing drugs, I'd be flat broke in the blink of an eye." "But you have your allowance from your parents, do you not?" she remarked with something that might have been mistaken for amusement. "What did you say?" I hissed. She really was cutting to the bone today. I thought about raising my voice for a split second, but decided that I wasn't going to give her more weapons to use against me. So I simply said, that money's not mine to spend." By the time I'd drained my glass, Matsuri's was still half full, or half empty. "You really are a stubborn one, are you not?" she replied, the hint of a smile creeping back onto her face. I smiled blandly back and said, "So am I. So I am. So I am. My defining characteristic, eh?" Then she dropped a bomb on me. Tuka is addicted, as you well know, to her meds. I was too stunned to manage anything but a weak... What? Total loss for words, man. I mean, how'd Matsuri ever found out about that? I I certainly hadn't told Matsuri that Tpok was doing drugs, and I was pretty sure that Tpok herself hadn't either. Fascinating, she murmured. So you really thought you could keep me in the dark. But you know well as I do, there's no way I would have picked up it. There's no way I would have picked up it, so as long as I remained myself. So I see, I muttered back. She sighed and leaned back in her chair, tilting her head up toward the ceiling. Her hair fluttered in the air for a moment before settling once again. In the depths of her eyes I could see rings of light reflected from the fluorescent lamp overhead. She almost looked not of this world. Tpok is so weak, is she not? She murmured, always needing to be swept up by something, always needing some circumstance to blame. Matsuri wasn't trying to make fun of Tpok. I knew that wasn't her intention. To her, this was a basic recital of facts, cut and dry, incontrovertible. But those facts were so hurtful that they made her intentions next to meaningless. What do you know? I retorted. Even if this was an old friend of mine, I wasn't about to let her talk about my love, if that's indeed what you call someone you have sex with just about every night that way. What do I know? Matsuri continued, unperturbed. Very well, let me tell you. I know that everybody walks through this world making ridiculous excuses for some actions that were always best left undone. I know I hate it when people choose to pervert the good and honest rules they know they ought to obey, all for some personal reason that is neither personal nor reasonable. I know that there are many brands of weakness in the world, and that Tpok's brand is the simplest of all. She just runs away from anything she doesn't want to experience. And when her legs give out, she begs for someone or something to carry her, saying, "Oh, look at me, poor me, an orphan, all alone in the world." That is what I know. I shot back. You've got it all wrong. Tpok doesn't make any excuses for the way her life is. She simply lives the way she wants and does so even more independently than I do. Yes, Matsuri cut in curtly, always holding this trump card called "But I'm an orphan" behind her little back. She shattered the remains of my argument to bits against the monstrous force of her glacial indifference. What was I supposed to say? I don't know anymore. I felt completely lost. For one thing, I had no idea what game she was playing here. While it was true she played the part of the Ice Princess well, it wasn't like her to speak so ill of someone else, an old friend of hers at that, like this. That wasn't the Matsuri I knew. More importantly, I just realized something. I'd raised an objection not because I was mad at that she was bad-mouthing my girl, but because I felt if Tpok and I were really in love, I was obligated to do so. You know, I started. Matsuri, do you? Yes, she replied crisply. I muttered a never mind and snapped my mouth shut. Do you really think you're so strong yourself? Ooh. I knew there was no point in finishing my question, so I didn't finish it. But I was grasped with the sudden conviction that behind all that ice, Matsuri was the weakest of all. Okay. I had no proof, but looking at her right now, I knew this to be true. I said, half to myself, how strange. What is? Matsuri replied. No, I mumbled. I'm just talking to myself, sorry. The fact that three of us were childhood friends, that's what was so strange. Tomohiro Higuchi, Tpok Ichimura, Matsuri Hikiyama. Now Tpok and I were orphans. Not because our parents were dead, or because there was some natural disaster, or some tear-jerking idiocy like that. No, the truth was so much simpler. Our birth parents didn't want us, so they abandoned us on the streets. Maybe they were still out there, you know? Out there happily fucking each other silly and dropping their unwanted brats in gutters everywhere. Regular as clockwork every 9 months. Anyway, that was how Tpok and I both ended up spending our early childhoods in an orphanage. But Matsuri was different. She was the only daughter of a very rich family, as sharp as a razor and as elegant as its killing edge. There was a vast chasm in the social order that separated people like us from her. So why in the world would she ever decide to make friends with us? It wasn't as if we'd ever approached her, ever. In fact, it was the other way around. It made no sense. The entire world was give and take, and we'd never have a single thing to give her. Friends, playmates, companions, childhood friends, best friends. We were all those things, and yet it was as if there was still no real connection between Matsuri and us. Yes, we were friends and playmates and companions and all of that. But what did it mean? Nothing. Everything was empty. Oh, now if Matsuri were manipulating us with money, making us do whatever dirty work she wanted with the pretext of being friends, that would be one thing. I could even have accepted it if it were the case. But it wasn't. She didn't stoop to something so trite and commonplace, apparently. If there was no give, there could be no take. Perhaps all that existed of the relationship between me and her was a hollow shell after all. So I said with a sigh, "Tell me." "Yes," she responded. "Why are you here anyway? Why are you involving yourself with a lowlife like me anyway?" I lost count of the times I'd stopped myself just before asking questions like that. Maybe it was because I was afraid of asking. Maybe it was because I was afraid of the answer. All I knew was that I was afraid, so I did not ask. Afraid of what? Afraid of raising the curtain on the final act, maybe. Afraid of bringing up this hollow shell of a relationship to its grand finale and curtain call. With a simple, "Okay, from here on out you and I are dead to each other. Complete strangers, understand?" Afraid of raising the knife and cutting through the empty bonds that tied us, turning us into two human beings that had no more reason to smile at each other. I didn't know why I was so afraid. So I said again with a sigh, "Tell me." "Yes," she responded again, patiently. The dark pools in her eyes flickered with some unknown emotion as she waited for me to continue. "Is it okay for you to be playing hooky like this? Isn't your school crazy strict about stuff like that?" I finished casually. "Not exactly okay," she replied in her monotone, "but I do not particularly care." The look in her eyes just then could really have frozen water into ice. I shrugged. "Fine, then let's change the subject. Where'd you hear about this new drug dealer anyhow?" She shrugged in return. "A classmate of mine happens to be one of his customers." "Really?" I retorted. "What need does a crowd of stuck-up princesses have for drugs anyway?" Matsuri smiled dryly at this before saying, "What separates us from you? Certainly we take pains to look all elegant and refined on the outside. But do you think that can hide the fact that on the inside, we are all of us dying? Girls tend to be more like each other than not. The same eyes and ears and mouths and breasts and menstrual periods, and addictions and rapists and drug dealers. It just happens that some of us pay more for the same thing. That is all." "Ha, I laughed without much merriment. And do tell me, what does this dealer push? I do not know exactly, but my classmate calls it China White or something like that, Matsuri replied. China White, I managed in shock. Why did it have to come to that? Matsuri's eyes bored into me, asked me a question I could not resist. China White, I started, is a kind of heroin. A downer, not an upper at all. I'm surprised it's in demand at all in this country. We have enough things to be down about as it is. And on top of that, it's pretty dangerous. Has a really high rate of addiction and withdrawal's a real bitch. I raised my glass to my lips before I realized that it was empty. I sucked on the ice cube for a bit, spat it back out into the cup. Then I remarked, I have no idea what that guy's thinking selling something like that to high schoolers. Could it not be that he has ties to organized crime? Matsuri asked quietly. Not a bad guess, I answered. But I'm afraid that's not it. If he were, he wouldn't be selling China White in a city like this. The demand's too low here to make that worthwhile. Then what was this? Just a grab for money? No, that couldn't be it either. He had to have some other reason to be doing this, and my mood turned decidedly sour, because I had a feeling I knew what it was. There wasn't anything I could do about it anyway. It wasn't as if I held any sway in the criminal underworld, if it existed at all, of the city, and it wasn't as if I knew people in high places anyhow. So my life was in shambles, I was powerless, and I still wanted to think of myself as some proud lone wolf. In other words, in the end, I too was weak, because I never wanted anyone to come close enough to me to find out just how flawed I was. Because the same was true for Tpok, Matsuri, and for every other human being on this miserable planet. Where? I struggled for words for a second. Old friends, aren't we? Matsuri just stared back at me, the look in her eyes unfathomable. So I continued. Tell me, did you come here today because you thought I was that drug dealer? Yes, that was one of the two reasons, she replied with a smile. And I shot back, what was the other reason? In response, she just looked away from me. Oh, why so quiet now? I ribbed. She kept looking away and murmured no particular reason. The other reason, she finally said. No, it is better that I do not say it. You will just have to wait for the answer, I am afraid. The hell, man, I muttered. A secret, you see, she replied. And a girl has to have secrets. You will find out sooner or later. Usually when a girl said this, she had a smile on her face, laughter on her tongue. Matsuri had neither. The conversation halted here for a time. I took to looking out the window at the national highway filled with cars and the forested areas that separated me from that road. I wasn't used to seeing any of this. I looked at my glass, saw that the ice had completely melted, so I stood and went to the sink. I washed the cup off, then put it on a drying rack. This drying rack, like every other thing in this apartment, was covered with a fine film of dust. By the time I came back to my guest, I saw that her cup was completely empty as well. There was a white bag at her feet now, and there was no trace of the book she'd been reading. I guess that'd mean I'd never find out what it was. Well, I said, I have to run off to work now. What are you going to do? I don't particularly mind if you want to stick around here, but I'm probably not coming back. She replied, looking down at her watch. It's a little past noon, isn't it? She nodded to herself, then looked back up at me. I will be in class starting 5th period then, she said with another smile that wasn't a smile. Why bother, I remarked. It's not as if you haven't missed most of the school day already. She chose her words with care. I simply do not wish to be under the scrutiny of my school's public ethics committee, although I may be too late to prevent that. What, they've blacklisted you already? I snorted, suppressing the urge to laugh. Correct. No, I had to laugh. An academy for stuck-up little princesses after all, even if you are all dying inside. You, Matsuri said slowly, must really never get bored of that expression. What, stuck-up little princesses? Sorry. Just jealous, I swear, I replied. Ah, fine lie, she shot back. Still playing me for the fool, I see, but do take care. I may not mind, but you might find yourself in a bad way if you say that to the wrong person. You will find that my classmates are not as forgiving as I am. Their vengeance would be quick to follow. Funny how she could make a monotone sound so threatening. And how would they exact revenge anyway? I snorted, by calling up a pizza place and making them deliver a whole truck full of large pizzas in my name. She smiled at this and said, who knows, perhaps you should provoke one of my classmates and see what happens. I think I'll pass, thanks, I replied with a smile of my own. Well, guys, that was talking with Matsuri, I guess. This drug dealer I did not see coming in to this story, but hey, it's getting very interesting. I really like it. I recommend everyone to play through it. Just don't spoil it if you have before I finish this. But yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.